wasn't until late yesterday that I found out you guys were trying to stream on a stream.
Oh, no. Oh, great notice, huh?
Okay.
Good morning,
Good morning, Pete.
Morning, Adam. How are you?
Good, Pete. How are you?
Good, thanks. I like the playing music.
Will that work? Will this work?
Yeah, I think we need to do that more often.
Well, the music's coming from Connected.
Oh.
I'll see if I can add weight room music to our meeting.
Maybe we get
Maybe
theme,
we should get something a little bit more lively.
maybe we get theme music for Sue and Eber.
There you go. A
Right?
little intro music.
Right. That's where they get the smoke machines.
Yeah, the old strobe lights.
Right.
Pete, were you here when the dome existed across from the dorm? Where old Dwyer's is? It used to be the dome.
Yeah.
Disco.
Yeah.
I think I was an undergraduate and I was, well, maybe I was older, I don't know. I bartended and cocktail waitress there.
Uh-huh. That had to be a tough job, I'll tell you.
Yeah, you put in, back then we didn't have the pedometers and all, but we went
Right.
round and round.
When I first started university, the drinking age was 18. And so I was 18. And then that summer, they passed it to 19.
Uh-huh.
And then, so I was legal and then not legal. And then, so then I got legal again, and then they went to 21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't stop you with the parties down the street.
No, it sure did not.
Pete, I'm waiting for you to respond to what's her, let me see, find her, the one who talked about the bill, Senate File 17.
No, I didn't see it,
Oh, okay.
but I will respond to it.
It's the one that, as far as providing public notices in the newspaper.
Oh.
She says it's another way of just covering up and doing things and not being transparent.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, I'm handing that one over to Pete.
Right.
Good morning, Jackie. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Good morning, Pete.
Good morning, Jackie. How are you?
Has your mom seen Bertie again? Okay. I was just wondering how Bertie was. Okay. Bertie did? Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Mm. Is your mom doing well with the therapy?
She is.
Good. Mhm.
Yeah, she is, I told her that I was going to ask Bernie, because she thinks it's time for me to go home and sleep in the bed.
Uh-huh.
Believe me, I'm anxious to do
I
that.
bet you are,
But
yeah.
I said, I'm gonna ask Bertie, and Bertie says, she said, oh yeah, Bertie said, we need to have a big party and celebrate. You know, I've gotten this far. I said, okay, when I hear it, I'll believe it.
Oh.
You know?
Well, I hope it wasn't for anything but that.
Yeah, bless her father too much. The whole family, I mean, everybody, you know. Good morning, Adam. Thank you for having things up and ready. Appreciate that. Appreciate you.
Hey, Aaron, how you doing?
Well, good morning, Eric.
You guys an idea of what the live view looks like.
Okay.
So that's what everyone else, if they're hitting the Zoom session, workers, so you get the share and then whatever the active speaker is. So, 3 subscribers.
Yeah. Hey, look at us go. Jackie, about how much does it cost for us to put all our stuff in the newspaper every year. Is it 50, 70,000?
Oh, yeah, I can tell you exactly how much we paid at the end of last fiscal year. Give me
Okay.
just a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
We had somebody question coming to us, and I didn't have that number, so I wanted to respond to them with the number. That,
So there's a name for it right now. Here's the full question.
yeah.
So,
So I talked with Mayor Weaver last night about the small groups and just kind of what we thought about going forward. So I'll,
Okay, should I be reaching out to my group members?
no,
Not yet?
not yet.
Okay.
But sooner rather than later, they're going to, thank you, Kayla. Approve the resolution, and then we'll approve our resolution next Tuesday. And so, I kind of think they should be, I asked them, like, we should prepare before the first one, right? Like, get a list of 4 things you should think could be done.
Yeah.
And then maybe start on 1 or 2, and just complete it.
It's a great idea because Sharon and I are new sort of to both entities. But maybe we would want to, for the first few times that we meet or something, invite some guests like yourself and to give us a bit of hydrologists, maybe Derek or somebody else, just to sort of bring us up to speed so we all know the information background. I'm talking about my group.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I thought that was a great idea.
Yeah.
I know I've been in communication with Vern, but I didn't know everything that's good.
Right.
And two, do we want to start with protection of the officers? You want to start with somebody we need water to.
Right.
whatever you need. Where would you like it?
Sure.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that's a great idea. Have some idea of where we're going instead of just being
Yeah.
social event.
Right. And I told Paul, I said, I don't like to meet just to stay at a meeting. And so, like, I'm going to press my group to keep it at an hour.
Yeah.
Right. And my thought was that, like, this is a goal I think we can get done. This is a goal that we'd like to get done, and this is another goal that's a stretch for us, right?
How about I just lay the podium on
Get done, and everybody should come with that.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Is he going to communicate that? Did you communicate that to Paul?
Yeah.
And so is he going to?
I
somewhat
believe so,
communicate
and
that
we
to
just kind of hashed it out, and they say, well, what staff should be there? I'm like, well, kind of depends on what your goal is, right?
Yeah.
Civil.
I don't know if staff needs to be there at the initial meeting because
Right,
you're
right.
setting up goals.
Right.
You know, if we're just discussing those, it's time for staff.
Yeah, and so then we thought about, he's like, well, what should we check in? And I said, well, we should do quarterly at our own fields, right? And then 6 months maybe as an entire group, just as a number. And he's like, well, that's a long time to wait for stuff to get done. I'm like, we don't need to wait to get stuff done, right?
No, right.
That
It can be
is
done, you can be reporting that it was done.
Right, exactly right. Like, because we're gonna all both have to do policy on our own.
Exactly.
So when you, and that group comes up with something they think is reasonable.
For the
they-
proposed rail tie bridge project. We will start the meeting in the next couple of minutes to allow participants time to join the meeting. We encourage the public to either use the call-in number or the online streaming platform via the project website. If you're only connected via phone and would like to view the presentation, please visit www.railtiewind.com.
I can sort of dancing over here in my chair. What would you prefer?
This? Oh, I don't mind this, I just wanna know which floor it's on. It's like calming, this is the kind of music they play at the dentist.
Yes.
They're like, oh, how's it going today, everything's great, so just want you to root out to this nice,
Well, you're like,
this nice chill
the
out.
music is making me nervous.
You're a John Taylor fan, right? Open wide.
My former dentist has retired, but she always played country music, and it wasn't even good country music. I was like, oh God, I'm captive here.
Sue, we had talked about each group kind of finding its own way, right? Like setting up how they wanted to do that, right? And not trying to, I don't believe being too very dictatorial about it. If one group
I like
wants to do an hour and a half, right? I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
care, right? Who
Right.
cares, right?
Right.
And I don't care to be involved in those groups, right, overall. And I don't
Well,
know
that's why we were assigned it. I don't need to know what you're doing, I'm micromanaging your group.
Right.
I've got plenty to do on my own group.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I just wanted that flexibility, I think, is important.
I think so too, because some meetings, maybe they'll last a half an hour, we get our assignment and we go.
Yeah.
And maybe another one will be an hour and a half. I
Right.
think it needs to be individualized as groups.
Yeah, yeah. So that's basically what we talked about. And then just thinking about ours, I think informational would be a first one. Like, for instance, we think the intentions there, everybody in the group should be caught up by Bob and Dale and Aaron about where we sit, and then any questions, and then let's try to knock it out, right? Figure out what we
And
agree on.
that's why I think, at least from my perspective, I'd like to invite like Pluto or
Yeah.
somebody who has that background information that can tell me exactly what has been done.
I will
County,
be monitoring
because I don't know.
public
Right,
information.
yeah, yeah.
Following our presentation, we will open up the meeting for your questions. You can submit questions through the online streaming platform or through phone. The presentation will be approximately 45 minutes with an additional 45 minutes for question and answer at the end of it. You can submit questions at any time during the presentation or during the Q&A session. Please choose to do one of the following. You may type up your questions directly into the online platform question section of the panel located below the live feed. If you're connected via phone and you're currently on the line and would like to ask a question, please press *3, which will allow you to submit your questions to a broadband agent. You may also dial 833-946-1567 to submit your questions to an agent. A video recording of the presentation will be available on the project website at www.railhighwind.com. After this meeting, you may also submit questions anytime at info@railhighwind.com. Please welcome Amanda McDonald and John Krupa with Connection, who will provide a presentation.
Hi, everyone. This is Amanda McDonald. I am the project manager for the Rail Highway project. I will be presenting today along with John Cuba, who is the Director of Environmental Affairs at Connection. Also joining us today is Mark Waller, who is the Vice President of Development Connection, as well as Amy Sherman and Joy McLean with Tetra Tech. Tetra Tech is an environmental consulting firm that is supporting the development of the state and county permit applications for the Rail Highway project. Tetra Tech also developed numerous studies and reports for the project to support the federal research review. The purpose of today's meeting is to provide information to the public about the Rail Highway project. In normal times, of course, our preference would be for us to hold this meeting in person. So just wanted to say that we really appreciate everyone's flexibility in using a virtual platform for this meeting. Specifically, this meeting fulfills the statutory requirements that we hold a public info meeting ahead of beginning our state permit application to the Wyoming Industrial Site Council. But more broadly than that, it's important to us that the local community is informed on the project. So for that reason, we are also going to be using this meeting as an opportunity to provide a general overview of the project and its regulatory and environmental permitting timeline at the federal and county levels as well. This presentation will cover the topics outlined on the agenda and will be followed by a question and answer session. Before we discuss the Rail Pilot project, I'm going to provide a brief overview of our company, Connection. Connection is an independent developer of renewable energy projects across the United States, including utility scale wind, solar, and battery storage projects. Our team includes about 30 full-time employees. It's composed of renewable energy professionals who have a depth of experience developing, constructing, and operating renewable energy projects across their careers. Connection is funded by Quantum Energy Partners, a private equity firm that has more than 2 decades of experience in the energy industry. Connection is part of Quantum Energy's clean energy platform. So although Connection itself is a relatively small company, we do have the financial strength and stability to successfully complete large renewable energy projects. The Railside Wind Project is a 504 megawatt wind project located in southeastern Albany County. The project is located near Tide Heights, about 15 miles south of Laramie. This map shows the outline of the project area. The project is bisected by Highway 287, which splits the project roughly in half into west and east states. The northernmost border of the project is located a couple miles south of Highway I-80. I've had some people ask me if we are putting turbines in Weedaroo, but to clarify, we are not. Weedaroo is located on the other side of Highway I-80 from the project area. We are aiming to begin construction of the project in early 2022. I'll discuss the schedule in more detail later on in the presentation. We selected this location for the Rail Highway project through a robust site screening exercise that started with the entire state of Wyoming. We ultimately selected this location for a number of reasons. First off, the excellent wind resource. Also, importantly, there is an existing transmission line that runs directly through the southern half of the project area, known as the bright purple line on this map. The lack of high voltage transmission lines has been a limiting factor for wind development in Wyoming. So it is crucial that the project area already has an existing transmission line with available capacity to move the wind power to market. Additionally, we considered environmental factors in choosing this location. We acknowledge that any large wind project is going to have environmental impacts. However, this project location does avoid some of the more environmentally sensitive areas in Wyoming, such as sage-brush core areas and connectivity areas, Wyoming Game designated HA migration corridors, and wildlife conservation areas. This map shows the project turbine siting corridors that we developed for the project. The corridors are primarily vertical in order to best capture the wind speed, which flows predominantly from the west. These siting corridors were developed to comply with Albany County setback requirements to avoid existing infrastructure such as pipelines and communication beam paths, and to avoid known environmental resources. The purpose of these siting corridors was to narrow the area that would be studied as part of the federal legal review process, while still providing enough flexibility for a range of turbine model options. This slide summarizes the various components of the wind project. Connection has continued to turbines would make up the full 504 megawatt wind project. The turbine has a total tip height of 590.5 feet, which is measured from the base of the tower to the tip of the blade. The wind project will also include grounded access roads to each turbine. As much as possible, we have cited the access roads to overlap with existing dirt roads in the project area in order to minimize new grounding. The project will also include low voltage collection lines to each turbine. These collection lines will be buried underground to the extent practical, although there may be some areas where they would need to be above ground due to geology or topography. The project will include an operations and maintenance facility, which is where the operations staff would work at. The project will include 2 project substations, which is where all of the electric collection lines will converge. There will be a substation in both the western and eastern half of the project area. There will also be an interconnection switchyard, which is where the wind project connects to the existing high voltage transmission line. The western project substation will be located directly adjacent to the interconnection switchyard. The eastern project substation will be connected to the switchyard by a dense transmission line. Finally, the project will also include 3 permanent net towers to measure the wind speed and confirm that the turbines are operating as expected. This slide shows the layout of project components described in the previous slide, located within the siting corridor that was shown in the slide before that. The turbines are depicted as the orange dots, the access roads are shown as green lines, and the electric collection lines are yellow lines. The collection lines are located adjacent to the access roads as much as possible in order to minimize ground erosion. The locations of these project components could change based on final engineering or if additional environmental resources are discovered. However, the layout shown here provides a good representation of the project layout. This layout map, along with the full presentation, will be available on our website for anyone to review in greater detail. The Laramie Wyoming project needs to secure numerous permits and approvals before starting construction. On this slide, we've outlined 3 major environmental and regulatory review processes. The first is the federal NEPA review. This federal review is required because the existing transmission line that the project is proposed to interconnect to is owned by the Western Area Power Association, which I'll call WAPA for short. And they are a federal entity that owns transmission infrastructure in the Western United States. In accordance with the National Environmental Policy Act, WAPA must prepare an environmental impact statement for the rail highway project. This environmental impact statement will disclose impacts of the proposed project on the surrounding environment and will also identify environmental protection measures that would be implemented to avoid and minimize potential impacts. The second major regulatory process is the Wyoming Industrial Siting Council's review. This review applies to utility scale wind projects in Wyoming and consolidates the review of 19 independent state agencies into a comprehensive permitting process. The purpose of the Industrial Siting Council's review is to ensure that the wind project complies with applicable laws, that it does not pose threat of serious injury to the environment, the social and economic conditions, or the inhabitants of the surrounding area, and that it's supported by ample financial resources to decommission and reclaim the project at the end of its operational life. The third major regulatory process is the Albany County Wind Energy Conversion System permit. This review ensures that the wind project is properly sited and complies with the county's setback distances and weight limits, among other requirements. This permitting process includes both review and recommendation by the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as review and approval by the Board of County Commissioners. This slide shows the schedule of the federal, state, and county permitting I described on the previous slide. The federal legal review is the longest and comprehensive review, taking about 2 years total. WAPA initiated it at the beginning of 2020 with a public scoping period. The next milestone will be WAPA's publication of the draft environmental impact statement, which we expect to occur in March. This will be followed by a public comment period and a public hearing where WAPA will receive comments on the draft EIS. WAPA will then work to address these comments in the final EIS, which they anticipate publishing in the fall. The review process will be completed with WAPA's publication of the record of decision, which we estimate could occur by the end of the year. Connection has not yet submitted its permit application to the state or county, but we anticipate doing so in the coming months. As with the federal NEPA process, the state and county processes also include public comment and engagement. The Wyoming Industrial Siting Council will hold a public hearing on the state application. Albany County will actually hold 2 separate meetings on the county application, since both the Planning and Zoning Board and the County Commission review the application. This slide shows a tentative construction schedule for the work project. Given the size of the project, we plan to construct it in 2 separate stages. The west stage, which is everything west of Highway 287, will be constructed first because it is closer to the existing transmission line. The east stage will be constructed the following year. Construction of a wind project includes the construction of the road, the collection system, and the turbine foundations, followed by the turbine installation and commissioning. Now I'm going to pass over the next 2 slides to connect them. Director of Environmental Affairs, John Kuba.
Thanks, Amanda. Hi, everyone. My name is John Kuba. I'm the Director of Environmental Affairs at Connection. As Amanda mentioned, the next couple of slides that I'll just run through will describe the extensive environmental review that has been performed to support the siting design and permitting of the rail tie project. As Amanda noted, the rail tie project has been under development for a couple of years now. A key component of this development process is a comprehensive environmental review of the project facilities that identifies sensitivities associated with the natural, cultural, and human environment. Connection has performed the iterative study process, beginning with a database review and agency environmental NGO outreach to identify known resources, followed by desktop analysis and on-the-ground field investigation to further refine our understanding of potential environmental resources in the area. Connection contracted external resource experts, including Petrotech and West, both well-respected environmental and natural resource consultants, to perform comprehensive studies of the resources known to occur at the site and identify potential for projects result in direct or indirect effects to these resources. These studies apply sound methodologies and review a host of topics, from potential impacts to natural resources such as wildlife and aquatic systems to potential impacts to the human environment such as visual and noise. It's important to note that although significant study effort has been completed to date, many studies and consultations will continue as the project progresses, with various studies occurring prior to construction and during the operational phase. Wildlife and habitats are an important consideration in siting and designing a wind project, particularly for avian and bat species, as wind project operation is known to result in avian and bat mortality. Connection has applied federal and state agency guidelines to study wildlife resources in the project area These include the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's wind energy guidelines, which applies a tiered process for evaluating site both prior to construction and during operation. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's Eagle Conservation Plan guidance, which focuses on studying eagle use and potential risks, and the Wyoming Game and Fish Department's wildlife protection recommendations, which identify best practices to avoid and minimize impact of Wyoming natural resources. Following these guidance documents, and in coordination with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Wyoming Game and Fish, Connection began performing avian bass and terrestrial species studies starting in January 2019. Avian point count studies involve year-round observations of large and small birds on the site, while aerial net surveys were performed within a project area all the way up to 10 miles from the site. Results of species-specific habitat assessments for state species of greatest conservation needs, including the burrowing owl and swift fox, identified potential habitat, which resulted in intensive presence asset surveys to determine whether the species actually occur on the site. Cultural resources include historic properties such as archaeological and architectural sites, which may be associated with prehistoric or historic human occupation. Connection performed early agency outreach and database record reviews to identify known resources associated with the project area. Additionally, outreach to Native American tribes is conducted to identify known sites or interest in the project area. Because impacts to cultural resources could go beyond the physical footprint of project components, Connection reviews historic properties in the vicinity that could be indirectly affected by the project. Of particular interest, Atlantic Monument National Historic Landmark is located approximately 1.2 miles northeast from the closest proposed survey location. Lastly, as the project design is finalized, Connection will perform intensive Class 3 pedestrian surveys prior to construction to identify any previously unrecorded sites within the project footprint. Unlike other wind developments on private or state land, Western Area Power Administration is leading a formal cultural resource review and consultation pursuant to Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. The Section 106 process requires federal agencies to consider effects of its actions on National Register of Historic Places eligible property. This process involves consultation with the Wyoming State Historic Preservation Office, the Advisory Council of Historic Preservation, Native American tribes, and other interested parties that have particular interest in cultural resources. The outcome of this process is to assess potential effects to historic properties and identify measures to avoid, minimize, or mitigate adverse effects. Visibility is a common concern associated with wind development, since turbines are generally large, above-ground structures that really can't be hidden from view. A visual impact assessment was performed to identify locations within 30 miles of the project area where the project turbines could be visible. Using this analysis, key observation points were selected and reviewed for viewer sensitivity. Additionally, 7 key observation points were selected for development of visual simulation, which illustrate what the project would look like for viewers standing at the respective observation points. The 7 sites include High Side of Butte, Ames Monument, the corner of Cherokee Park Road and Fish Creek Road, Mortenson Lake National Wildlife Refuge, Interstate 80, and the intersection of Snowy Range Road and Big Hollow Road. At the time these simulations were completed, Connection was considering a wide range of turbine options. Therefore, we performed simulations for both the maximum turbine height proposed, 675 feet, and the smallest turbine height proposed, which is 500 feet. The photo shown here demonstrates the simulation of the project with maximum turbine height as viewed from Ames Monument, which is located, as I mentioned, just east of the project site of approximately 1.2 miles. This is a fairly small photo, but we do encourage you to visit the project website to view the high-resolution version of this simulation and others. They can be found under the project location tab on the website. We've received a lot of questions 2020 flashing red aviation lights. In short, yes, the Federal Aviation Administration reviews obstructions to air navigation, such as wind turbines, and requires these turbines to be lit. However, nighttime visual impact can be minimized through the use of aircraft detection lighting systems, which is a technology that limits the illumination of turbine lights to occur only when aircraft are in the area and there's potential risk. Connection will apply to the FAA for use of aircraft detection lighting technology on the project. Construction and operation of the project will generate sound, which is regulated by the Albany County Wind Speed Regulation. The Albany Wind Ordinance mandates that sound associated with the project operation shall not exceed 55 decibels as measured at any point along the common property line between non-participating and participating landowners. Professional noise acoustics model the sound levels associated with the project equipment, including the proposed 4.2 megawatt turbine and the 2 substation locations. This exercise confirmed that the operational sound levels will not exceed the county's 55 decibel threshold at common property line, which is demonstrated by these contour lines that are shown in the figures here. I realize that the pink lines are maybe hard to see, but they fall nearly inside the more visible yellow contour lines, which represents the 50 decibel level. Similar to the review of sound generated at property lines, no noise-sensitive areas such as nearby residences are expected to experience operational project noise greater than existing ambient noise levels, which have been measured at between 45 and 53 decibels at the site. Project construction traffic was modeled to determine potential impacts to the existing road system and how this could affect local traffic flows at various intersections. Delivery of turbine components will require oversized loads, while the construction workforce will commute to the site in typical full-size and heavy-duty pickup trucks. Large materials, such as turbine components, will be transported to the project via rail and offloaded in Laramie, or via truck along Interstate 25, Interstate 80, or down U.S. Highway 287. Construction workers are anticipated to commute down 287 from Laramie. Use of county roads and state roads will be performed in accordance with road use agreements coordinated with both the Albany County and the Wyoming Department of Transportation. These agreements will dictate which roads will be used, the potential impacts to those roads, requirements for connections to use the road, and then connections responsibility to repair any damage to the road following use for the project. The topics covered here are just a few of the resources that have been studied and considered as part of the development process. Importantly, these comprehensive studies identify potential sensitivities that could be affected by the project. Connections use this information to develop over 100 environmental protection measures to avoid and minimize the potential for adverse effects to the natural, cultural, and human environment. Additional measures may result from the local, state, and federal regulatory and permitting process. In addition to these environmental protection measures, the project will develop various plans that outline the implementation of resource protection. Many of these plans are required by or a condition of approval by Albany County in the issuance of an Albany County special use permit or the Wyoming Industrial Siting Council permit. These plans and the EPMs provide strong protection for resources during the full life of the project, not just during construction, but through operations and during decommissioning. Now I'll turn the presentation back over to Amanda.
Thanks, John. For these last two slides, I'll go over some of the economic impacts of the project. One of the main impacts is the creation of new tax revenues for Albany County and the state. Wind projects in Wyoming pay 3 types of taxes: the sales and use tax, the wind generation tax, and property tax. In total, we estimate that during construction, the rail tie wind project would pay $27 million in taxes, of which $14.6 million would be paid to Albany County. During operations, the project would provide a steady stream of annual tax payments that average to about $4.2 million annually, of which $3.3 million would be paid to Albany County. Another economic impact of the project is the temporary construction workforce and the permanent operation workforce. During construction, we estimate the project will require an average of 120 workers over the 20-month construction period, with a peak of 195 workers in July 2023. The Wyoming Industrial Siting Council's review of the project includes an in-depth look at the impact that these construction workers, many of whom would be non-local, would have on the local community. For more remotely located wind projects, housing for construction workers can pose a serious challenge. Fortunately, our review of existing housing resources in Laramie found that there will be ample housing available. The construction workers will provide demand for hotels and motels that would otherwise be vacant, and they would also increase demand for restaurants and other local businesses. Another component of the Wyoming Industrial Siting Council's review is the distribution of impact assistance funds. The state can distribute these funds to local governments to demonstrate that the wind project would place increased demand on local services. The map on this slide shows the study area and the area of site influence that were defined for the rail tie wind project, which defines the areas and local governments that could be impacted by the construction and operation of the project. I'm going to conclude today's presentation by highlighting some of the key milestone dates coming up over this year. As discussed, we expect the draft environmental impact statement to be published in March. We also plan to submit our permit application to Albany County by the end of this quarter. The second quarter of 2021 will include Albany County's review of our permit application, as well as our submittal of our state permit application to the Wyoming Industrial Siting Council. In the third quarter of 2021, we would expect the state and Albany County to make their respective decisions on our permit application, and also for WACA to publish its final environmental impact statement. Finally, in the last quarter of 2021, we would expect WACA to publish its record of decisions on the rail tie wind project. By securing all major approvals by the end of 2021, we will be able to construct the project in 2022 and 2023. Thank you everyone for listening to this informational presentation about the rail tie wind project. We are happy now to answer any questions that were addressed during the presentation. I'm going to hand it back over to our moderator, Josh, to explain the process for submitting questions.
Thanks, Amanda and John, and we thank each of you for listening to our presentation. We will now open up the meeting for your questions. You can provide your questions directly through the online streaming platform on our website, or if you would like to ask questions via phone, please call 833-946-1567. Once again, the number is 833-946-1567. If you're currently on the phone line and would like to ask a question, please press *3. Pressing *3 allows you to submit your questions into our queue. We will start the question and answer process portion of the meeting in just a couple minutes, and and we appreciate your patience as we start answering questions. We're going to repeat those instructions one more time just to allow people the opportunity to ask questions. Once again, you can provide your questions directly through the online streaming platform on our website, or if you would like to ask questions via phone, please call 833-946-1567. Once again, the number is 833-946-1567. If you are currently on the phone line and would like to ask a question, please press *3. Pressing *3 allows you to submit your question into our queue. We will start answering your questions in just a moment. Thank you.
Adam, could you type in?
Amanda, we have a question. Our first question is asked, what is the life expectancy of the wind farm?
Thanks, Josh. The life expectancy of the wind project equipment is 35 years. At the end of this expected project life, there could be an opportunity to repower the wind project with the wind turbine technology. You may be familiar with this being done for some of the older wind projects in Wyoming. Alternatively, if the project is not repowered, then the project infrastructure would be removed and the area would be replaced at the end of the 35-year project life.
Thanks, Amanda. Our next question is for you as well. What is the impact to livestock grazing south of high siting?
Sure. We actually don't expect there to be any noticeable impact to livestock grazing. The permanent project footprint is less than 2% of the overall project area, leaving the rest of the area available for cattle grazing. And actually, wind energy generation and cattle grazing are very compatible. In fact, the majority of wind farms in the Western United States are located on land that is actively used for cattle grazing.
Our next question is for you as well, Amanda. Who will be responsible for the removal and disposal of all these towers?
The project owner is required to remove and dispose of the project infrastructure and reclaim the project area at the end of its operational life. And actually, before we can even start construction on the wind project, the state of Wyoming requires that wind companies put up a bond or some other type of financial assurance that covers the cost of decommissioning, disposal, and reclamation. And then throughout the project life, this bond amount is re-estimated and reviewed every 5 years and updated as necessary.
Our next question is for you as well, Amanda. What is the rotational speed of the blade?
Sure. So the speed of the tip of the blade, which is the fastest moving part of the turbine, on average, the speed of the blade tip is 120 miles per hour. And wind turbines are designed to have fairly similar maximum blade tip speeds, regardless of the turbine size. So this means that turbines with longer blades are generally designed to have lower revolutions per minute to keep that maximum blade tip speed constant.
Our next question is for you as well, Amanda. What are the plans to maintain or improve Cherokee Park Road during construction?
Okay.
The maintenance and improvement of all county roads used for the project, including Cherokee Park Road, are going to be captured in the road use and maintenance agreement that will be developed by ConnectGen and the Albany County Road and Bridge Department. We're required to have this agreement in place before we can start construction. We haven't yet determined if upgrades will be needed for Cherokee Park Road, but if upgrades are needed, they will be captured in this agreement. The agreement also ensures that the county road conditions will be documented prior to starting construction, and that ConnectGen will be accountable for any upgrades, maintenance, or repairs to the county roads that are necessary for the project construction. And then we'll also be coordinating with Albany County and the Wyoming Department of Transportation on a traffic management plan to make sure that the project construction doesn't seriously interfere with the public's ability to use highways or county roads like Cherokee Park Road.
Our next question is for John, and the question is, please describe any equipment that will be installed on the turbines to limit bird death.
Yeah, thanks, good question. So, wind operation and bird mortality is a known risk and a well-documented issue. We are looking at multiple ways to help avoid and minimize the potential for collision risk. And, really there's kind of two components of a wind project that are associated with collision risk. One, the turbines themselves, obviously, and then second, any above ground electric infrastructure, such as the gin tie that we're proposing in this case. So to address both of those two components, for one, on the turbine side, there is new emerging technology that is available and being essentially proven to be effective in minimizing risk of collision. And that technology is essentially detection technology that identifies when certain bird species are in the area and at risk of colliding with turbines, and that technology then is ultimately connected to this project status system, which allows certain turbines to be turned off in essentially eliminating the risk of collision. So that is a technology that we have been exploring and working with the manufacturer to understand applicability of this technology on the project. We do think it could be very useful for projects, such as rail tie in helping to reduce collisions. Secondly, I mentioned the above ground electric infrastructure, the gin tie here. We are designing the above ground electrical infrastructure to meet the requirements or the guidance of the Avian Power Line Interaction Committee, which specifically includes using things like bird flight converters on the overhead power to ground wires to make them more visible to birds. So these generally look like kind of spiral spring-shaped devices that get added to the top of the line to just increase the visibility of the line and reduce the potential for collision.
Okay, our next inquiry is for you, Amanda, and the person would like to see scientifically based data on the petroleum footprint of industrial wind turbines, specific to the towers proposed and from an outside source.
Sure. So I'm not familiar with the term petroleum footprint, right? But I assume the questioner is asking about the overall life cycle greenhouse gas footprint for the wind turbine, and which considers all fossil fuel emissions associated with the manufacturing, construction, and decommissioning of a wind turbine. I don't know that there's a study available specifically for the turbine we're going to use, the V150.2. But I do know that the National Renewable Energy Lab, which is part of the U.S. Department of Energy, did a comprehensive study compare the life cycle greenhouse gas footprint for various energy sources. And they found for wind, this footprint is 30 grams of greenhouse gas emissions per kilowatt of energy produced. And this is actually less than the total footprint for solar and nuclear energy.
Our next question is for you as well, Amanda. Is there a plan in place to hire Wyoming residents to build this project? If using out-of-state workers, what will be the ratio of Wyoming workers to out-of-state workers?
Yes, Connection will absolutely work with the construction contractor to prioritize the hiring of qualified Wyoming residents to construct the project. You know, it's definitely our preference to use as many in-state workers as possible. However, realistically, because Wyoming has such a small population, historically, a lot of the construction workers, you know, whether it's for wind or any sort of construction, do tend to come from out of state. For example, for other wind projects that were recently constructed in Wyoming, the ratio was roughly 20% in-state workers versus 80% out of state. This just has to do with, you know, the lack of available workers in Wyoming.
Our next question is for you, John. How close to the Ames Monument and the historic Old Sherman town site will the turbines be built? What will be the impact on these sites during construction and operation of the project?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Great question. So I touched on this briefly in the slides to show. So the project site is, the project area is located a little bit closer to Ames Monument than the 1.2 miles, but the closest turbine location is about 1.2 miles from Ames Monument. And given that the Ames Monument and the Sherman Town site are not located within the project footprint, we don't expect there to be direct effects to the project, from the project to those cultural resources. Now, there most definitely will be indirect effects due to the proximity and specifically the view shed. As we dug in and performed various studies on our side, such as the visual studies, the noise studies, shadow flicker study, etc. We were able to confirm that the project will not result in increased noise at Ames Monument. We don't anticipate there to be indirect effects associated with noise. Similarly, on the shadow flicker front, we don't expect there to be any shadow flicker experience at Ames Monument. Now, on the visual side, the project is going to be there. You can't hide wind turbines, and looking to generally the southwest direction, you will see the project. Now, the direction of view of the project is generally limited to looking due south and southwest, and then due west. There's a few turbines that would be within line of sight. So we do anticipate there to be visual impact. This is something that Western Area Power, the federal agency, is digging into as part of its Section 106 review. That review will really hone in and identify the specific direct and indirect impacts that could occur to those facilities or those resources, along with all other coastal resources in the project vicinity. And then through that process, they will identify appropriate mitigation of adverse effects.
Thanks, John. This next question is for you as well. How will the turbines be spaced to reduce the adverse visual effects of the Ames Monument National Historic Landmark? What steps are being taken to protect the setting at the monument, and what mitigation is being discussed?
Yeah. Great question. Very similar to the previous one. So I'll try to address the additional components there. So basically the turbines are generally arranged in those ballast foot corridors. And as shown on the slide deck earlier, those salvage corridors generally run, kind of north to south, which, is purposeful to take advantage of the wind direction that's generally coming out of the west. The spacing of the corridors are roughly associated with the spacing needed for turbines, which are, 10 rotor diameters between the rows of strings of turbines and around 3 rotor diameters between each turbine. So, when looking from a minus towards the project area, the spacing of turbines will, turbines generally be 1,300 feet or so apart between each other. So, you will see the turbines looking to the southwest. You will see the various rows of turbines from the foreground. The closest turbine being 1.2 miles to the background. Those turbines at the far western portion of the project will be roughly 6 or so miles away. So, as mentioned, in terms of addressing potential impacts, Western Area Power Administration is, driving the Section 106 consultation process. Through that process, there is coordination on a programmatic agreement that essentially requires these resources to be reviewed and appropriate mitigation measures to be implemented if there's an adverse effect. There are a couple of mitigation options that have been, incorporated in the programmatic agreement to date. They're more general in nature, and then we've had some initial discussions with various state agencies and cultural resource NGOs as part of the 106 process to talk about options and thoughts they have on mitigation opportunities. And in general, these include everything from looking at potential new sort of property access, digital media publications, and archaeological project partnerships to help get the community engaged in cultural resource studies. So there's a lot of really interesting options out there, and right now we're still in discussions with the group to better understand what will make sense for range monuments and any other resources that are adverse.
Thanks, John. Our next question is for Amanda. Is it possible to switch to solar panels instead of wind turbines?
I guess the short answer is no. The project under development is a wind project. In connection were to pursue a solar project in Wyoming. There would be many other locations across the state that would be better suited for solar. Conversely, this project location is a uniquely excellent site for a wind project.
Thanks. Our next question is for you as well, Amanda. How much money will be placed in escrow for disposal of turbines in the future?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the state of Wyoming requires that wind projects provide a financial assurance prior to the start of construction that covers the cost of decommissioning and disposal and reclamation of the project area. And this total cost for the rail side of the project has been estimated at about $18 million.
Our next question is for you as well, Amanda. In order to protect nearby residences from problems of shadow flicker at sunrise and sunset, have you considered undertaking shadow flicker models?
Yes, absolutely. Connection has modeled shadow flicker for the project. And as a background, the shadow flicker limit that's recommended by the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners is 30 hours of shadow flicker per year at occupied buildings, which represents about 0.3% of hours out of the year. And our shadow flicker model for rail side found that this 30-hour threshold will not be exceeded for any of the residences in and around the project area. In fact, will be significantly under the threshold.
Amanda, our next question is for you as well. What are plans for setbacks? Are they based on property lines or existing structures?
Both. setbacks are based on both property lines and existing structures. The project has been designed to comply with all the setback requirements. The county requires a number of different setbacks, such as setbacks from property lines, structures, highways, county roads, railroads, platted subdivisions, etc. So for example, the setback distance from county road and adjacent property line is 1.1 times the turbine height. So for the C150 4.2 turbines that we're going to use, that's a 650 foot setback. As another example, the county requires a setback of 5.5 times the turbine height from non-participating residences and occupied structures, and also from the property lines of subdivisions. So for our plant turbine type, that's a minimum setback of 3,248 feet from residences and the property lines of private subdivisions.
Our next question is for you as well, Amanda. In December, there were 2 home sales in Fish Creek Ranch where the listing price was less than the county's assessed value. How are you accounting for the potential decrease in property values caused by the wind project?
Sure. So property sales are, of course, dependent on a huge number of different factors. So I'd certainly be interested to learn more about the details of these specific sales that the questioner was referencing. And I encourage the person who submitted this question to follow up directly with any info they have. In general, comprehensive third-party studies have found that wind projects do not have long-term impact on the surrounding property values. But of course, each individual home sale is unique. So I'd certainly be open to seeing more information about these specific examples.
Thanks, Amanda. Our next question is for you as well. If the county upgrades the use of the property from agriculture to industrial, the Texas developer and the rancher will have an extraordinary windfall. What portion of that gain will be spent on infrastructure improvements to protect the current residents?
Yeah, I'm not fully sure I'm following this question fully, but it's our understanding that Albany County would not change the zoning of the property from agricultural to industrial. In the county, wind projects are allowed as a conditional use on this land that is zoned as agricultural, and we be applied to Albany County for this use through our wind energy conversion system permit application. And then in terms of tax payments, the Mineral Highway project would be paying ad valorem taxes on the wind project. Whose equipment is taxed as utility property. And then we also pay, as a reduction, we also pay sales and use taxes and the wind generation tax. In total, we estimate that connection would pay $14.6 million to Albany County during construction. And we would pay on average $3.3 million annually to Albany County during project operations. And as for Albany County, as for how Albany County chooses to spend those tax payments, I can't really comment on that. That's, of course, outside of connection control.
Our next question for you as well, Amanda. How will neighboring residential subdivisions be protected from noise, ice through, traffic, etc. from the wind project?
Albany County has established setbacks from property lines, structures, etc. We also set noise limits for wind projects, and these all ensure that the project is located a safe distance away from the general public. And specifically for residential subdivisions, the county setback is 5.5 times the turbine height from the property line. So this means that there will be a significant setback between the project and the directly adjacent subdivision property, regardless of whether a structure has been built on that property yet.
Thanks. Our next question is for you as well, Amanda. Our house would be less than 300 yards from the towers. Does that concern you?
Yeah, so like I was talking about before, the minimum setback distance from houses is 3,245 feet. So there would not be any towers located that close to your house. I'm happy to follow up with the person who asked this question directly, to provide a map showing the distance between their house and provide, but to reiterate, there's no way that a turbine would be that close to anyone's house.
Thanks. The next question is for both you, Amanda, and John. The science proves adverse health effects to health humans and animals. How do you rectify that?
Sure, I can take the human half of that question. I'll let Sean take the animal half. So, to be clear, peer-reviewed studies published in reputable journals have consistently found that while wind turbines can cause annoyance in some individuals, there is no link between wind turbines and adverse health effects. Unfortunately, there is a lot of pseudoscience out on the internet, so it's important to, be careful with, checking what the source is. Like, I'm familiar with some documents out there that are formatted to look like they're scientific articles, but they're not actually published in some sort of journal. They're not actually peer reviewed. For that reason, they're not credible. But when you look at, the actual credible scientific evidence out there, it consistently shows no adverse health effects from the turbines on humans. And then I will let John take the animal side of that question.
Yeah, thanks. And, with regard to the animal side, I guess I'd break that up into two parts, potential impacts to livestock versus potential impacts to wildlife. And I'm not 100% sure the direction of the question from the questioner, but on the livestock side, as Amanda mentioned, the currently a racing area. Racing will continue to occur on the site through the life of operations and after. It's routine for livestock production to continue in and around wind turbines. I'm not aware of any studies that suggest there's an adverse impact to livestock, whether it's cattle, sheep, goats, etc. And frankly, about every project that I've been on that has active livestock operations and active wind projects, oftentimes we see the livestock right up next to the turbine, either seeking shade in the turbine or milling around the turbine pad. So I wouldn't expect there to be any impact to livestock. On the wildlife side, as I mentioned earlier, yes, it is a known fact, right? Birds that do collide with wind projects, and that is an issue that the wind industry has spent a lot of time and essentially a lot of money putting studies forward to understand what those impacts are and understand the causal relationship with turbines. And furthermore, and most importantly, this is why we study each individual site to understand what the impacts are associated with the project we're putting forth. We obviously want to avoid sites that could have a significant adverse impact to any populations or any specific species that are currently at risk. And so a lot of emphasis on this project has gone into looking at species of concern, those species that are federally or state listed. In this case, the Wyoming doesn't have state listed species, but they do have species of greater conservation needs. And so, through application of the wind energy guidelines, in the kind of the framed approach to starting out, conducting studies very early prior to construction, conducting those studies for multiple years to understand what's occurring at the site, using that data to help inform siting design. Are there areas of higher risk? Are there areas that could be avoided to completely avoid an impact of species? Or are there certain measures, practices that could put forward to further minimize impact long term? So that's why we do these studies, is to really hone in and understand what the impacts are, and that's why coordination occurs with the various resource agencies to get their feedback as well. Longer term, after the project is constructed, we still continue these studies and doing post-construction mortality monitoring to figure out what actually is occurring on the site. Most importantly, is to recognize that there has been a lot of studies more recently to understand what the long-term impacts are to avian species, bat species, and one of the important thing to note is, yes, there are mortality events that happen, but based on all the data that we have and kind of the currently known science, those mortality events aren't leading to adverse impacts to populations of birds. That's, I think positive, but it still is not a call for us to not do those studies. We still do the site-specific studies to understand what's going on at each individual site.
Thanks. Our next question is for Amanda. Will my children be able to ride their bikes to their bus stop once the roads are industrialized with massive traffic during construction? How will we depend on these roads to be kept safe?
Sure. So during construction, we do acknowledge that there will be the inconvenience of construction vehicles using those roads. And that residents should use a little bit more caution in using roads during that construction period. As I mentioned, we'll be working with Albany County on traffic management plans to minimize risk and inconvenience to the general public who uses those roads. I also want to point out that this is a temporary inconvenience. During construction, there will be an increased amount of traffic, but during operations of the project, any sort of project-related traffic automation can be extremely minimal.
Thanks, Amanda. Our next question is for you, John. Why was the pumpkin sign not included in visual simulation, considering turbines travel right through the road? You have over 50 people who live off of and travel to and from Pumpkin Vine to 287.
Yeah, good question. So the visual impact study, looked at areas that are visible, or where the project would be visible from. So it's reached out pretty broad and initially went out to 30 miles from the project site. A whole host of key observation points right in the site based on known view sheds and viewer sensitivity. A site off of Pumpkin Vine Road was not identified, mainly because there were other sites that were representative of the nearby area, and those the analysis at those key observation points and the associated simulation will in fact show what the rest of the project will look like. Construction traffic traveling down Pumpkin Vine Road, yes, agree, yes, there will be traffic, on that road as well as other roads. However, that doesn't necessarily contribute to visual effects. The visual effect study of the project is more focused on the above ground structures that are going to be on the landscape during the operational life of the project. So that focuses on the larger wind turbine towers and not on construction traffic specifically.
Thanks, John. Our next question I'll actually be taken. So the question is, when will all these slides or images be uploaded to the website? And we will have these uploaded later this week. So please feel free to check out our website at railhighwinds.com. Our next question is for you, John. Please explain the historic property treatment plan. What is proposed for Ames Monument?
Sure. Yeah, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'll try to go into a little bit more detail here. So, with regard to the historic property treatment plan, so that plan is a component of the programmatic agreement that western area of our administration is coordinating for the project. So as part of the section 106 process, the programmatic agreement initially outlined all of the parties involved with cultural resource, knowledge of the area, the specific roles they have in discussing potential impacts and discussing potential mitigation of those impacts. So the programmatic agreement goes into the study process, outlining what needs to be done to understand those impacts, and then a component of it is what should be done to address the impacts. So the historic property treatment plan is that component. So for each cultural resource site, Ames Monument is one that we've been discussing a bit on this call, but each historic site, whether it be a site that may be found during our survey prior to construction, or one of the historic properties located off-site that would be indirectly affected, each of those, if what hearing determines that there's an adverse effect, would need to be mitigated. So the historic property treatment plan would be performed for each of those properties to identify what the specific treatment options could be. And so, for instance, a site was found within project disturbance footprint, in the, for instance, the path of construction, a potential treatment option that would be described in the historic property treatment plan would be, can we work around a site, for instance, put up a barrier and completely avoid that site? That would be a potential treatment. For a site like a monument, if there is potential for direct effects there, such as visual, for instance, there could be mitigation treatment options. Some of those that I mentioned earlier that are currently being discussed, such as working with local community and archaeological projects, working on some type of digital media production, etc. All could be effective mitigation options to offset the project impact.
Thanks, John. Our next question is for you as well. Is your noise data the same regardless of the turbine used? Is one quieter than another? Which and how much quieter?
Yeah, good question. Not only get pretty specific, so I'll try my best to answer that. So the only thing that's with each turbine is different. So each turbine has specific octave band ratings. So the manufacturer puts out specific noise that is generated from the turbine, and that data is used to help model the potential noise impact associated with that specific turbine and its representative layout. So for the 4.2 megawatt platform that we've shown on this presentation, we modeled the specific octave band rating of that 4.2 megawatt turbine. Now, other turbines that we are considering may have higher or lower sound generation, and if a different turbine was used, we would have to model that turbine and its associated layout to confirm that we do meet the 55 dBA threshold at property line that's required by the county. I don't have specific offhand on which turbine platform is associated with a louder or quieter turbine, but generally they're mostly the same. As turbines have gone higher, we have been seeing that the smaller turbines are a little bit quieter because they're further from the ground, whereas turbines closer to the ground generate that noise is essentially closer to the ground, therefore you do get a higher potential increased noise threshold. So there are differences, but in short, we do have to model whatever we propose for this project and meet the county requirements.
Our next question for you, Amanda. Where and when will the county application be available for viewing?
We are planning to upload the county application once we submit it to our project website, www.realhighway.com. I'm not sure if Albany County is also going to upload the application to their website, but regardless, you'll be able to find it on our website. And as far as timing, that's still a little bit unknown, but we are planning to submit that application in the coming months.
Thanks, Amanda. This next question is for you as well. You spoke to profits expected, no comments for lost revenues. What are the lost revenues for the county for taxes, lost on homes not built, land values decreased, social costs for Laramie, addiction treatment, for example, and increased fire protection costs?
Okay, that's a very broad question. That's not something that we have specifically calculated. We have calculated what the project benefits will be. And it's up to the ultimate decision makers, whether it's the state or the county, to weigh, all of the project benefits and impacts. Whether the project is best for the county or not.
Thanks, Amanda. The next question is for you, John. Game and Fish wrote a letter of disapproval to State Land Board for this project. Is Connect Gen taking this into account and planning to do more study of the migration and wintering components of this project?
Thanks, Josh. It's an interesting question. I apologize. I'm not aware of a letter that Game and Fish wrote to the State Land Board suggesting disapproval of the project. If somebody is, wish they would fill us in, I will definitely reach out and double check to make sure I do see this letter and understand what the disapproval is. I can say that we have been coordinating with Laramie Game and Fish for several years now about the specific studies that they would like to see done for the project, making sure that we understand the methodology that they want to be performed and understand, making sure that we carry out those studies accordingly and provide results of those studies for their review. So we have done that to date, and we continue to do that, continue to coordinate with them on our wildlife studies and the potential for wildlife impact on the project. I hope that answers the question, and I'll do a little bit more digging to understand the nature of the letters that they report.
Thanks, John. This next question is for you as well. Game and Fish is just now updating their regulations and guidance for renewables. Will Connect Gen be seeking and following these updated regulations as they are released?
Yeah, great question. So, Connect Gen began developing this project, in accordance with the pre-existing Laramie Game and Fish recommendations for avoiding minimizing impacts to wildlife project. And we continue to move forward with this project, applying those same recommendations. Those I would caveat that Game and Fish's recommendations are just that. They are recommendations, that they provide a good set of criteria to help avoid and minimize impacts when certain resources are at risk. So a key component of those guidelines are coordination with Game and Fish early on in the project, and then long term through the operational life of the project. And so with regards to the new regulations, we've been reviewing them briefly. They are generally consistent with what we're currently applying on the project, and consistent with other federal measures that we're applying to the project, or federal guidelines that we're applying. So I do think that we will continue to meet those Laramie Game and Fish's requirements and guidelines as it pertains to wildlife impact.
Thanks, John. Our next question is for you as well. Recent studies have found that avian mortality is reduced by 50% by painting blades black. Would Connection consider coloring blades to reduce avian mortality?
Yeah, really good question. The study was released late last year and got a lot of media attention. Of course, it's a very fruitful study in that it does suggest and does show that there was a reduction in mortality associated with painting certain blades. Now, I've dug into the study a little bit, and there are some factors that are, maybe a little bit atypical from what we essentially see at projects like Rail Tie. And that's an important thing to understand associated with any study is it broadly applicable to every wind project everywhere? And, in this case, I think a lot needs to be done to understand how any of the turbine blades could affect reduction in mortality at any given site. I think more science is going to come out on this subject. That previous study was done in Europe. I think it will be you may see some replication here in the U.S., which would be helpful, especially as it relates to different turbine sizes and different locations, topography, different vegetation makeups and colorations, etc. of the specific site. I think one other thought on this is that conducting a third mitigation measure for one resource is having adverse effects on another resource. And in this case, changing its turbine, one turbine blade black could make the project maybe more visible. It could create an additional visual concern for stakeholders that maybe are more concerned with the visual impact of the project. So that's something that would really need to be considered as to whether or not it's feasible. And then there's still a little bit to understand as to whether the Federal Aviation Administration would allow for the turbine blade the color black. The FAA generally requires the turbines to be demarked a certain way and to maintain visibility for aviation instruction. So that would be one more consideration that would have to fall in place. But to answer the question, we're not currently planning to paint turbines or turbine blades for this project.
Thanks, John. Our next question is for you, Amanda. I think your footprint shows the maximum size of the wind farm. If the WAPA mine capacity limits the size of the project, what areas would see the turbine strings removed first?
Yeah, that's correct. That the project layout shows the full 504 megawatt wind project. We believe that the WAPA transmission line will be able to accommodate the full project, but if for some reason we are constrained on capacity, we would prioritize building the western half of the project area, since that is closer to the existing transmission line and the planned interconnection. So it's hard to say specifically which turbine strings would be removed, but generally the highest priority turbines are the ones that are closest to the point of interconnection, and then moving north and east from there.
Thanks, Amanda. This next question is for you as well. Where are the old towers and blades disposed, and do they decompose?
Sure. So, a significant portion of the wind turbine is recyclable. So, all of the steel and copper, etc., in the tower can be recycled. The fiberglass turbine blades themselves currently have fairly limited opportunities for recycling. There are a few plants from the U.S. that are getting started up now to recycle turbine blades, and we're hopeful that we're going to see more of those in a few years. But certainly, as been saying in 2021, turbine blades are typically disposed of in landfills. The turbine blades are, completely inert. They do not, leach any sort of chemicals into the ground or anything. So, compared to the types of waste that are produced by fossil fuel energy, turbine friendly, they're, you know, fairly unproblematic and having a landfill. But then, of course, the double-edged sword of that is they do not decompose. So the lines are
Right, they don't decompose. So we need to find a way to take care of that. Right. Exactly. Exactly. Just,
Dan, would you just let me know when you're ready?
You guys will start. Everything's still recording, so participants can go online. We just take you off.
Super, thank you.
Sure.
Well, welcome everybody to the work session. You know, initially I don't know that we would expect this to come to a resolution today. I'd like to be done by 11:30 if we could. I know you guys have work to do. So let's get started. Can we do stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And just a housekeeping note that another presentation by Connect Gen will be tonight at 5 p.m. if anybody is on listening in. So you'll be able to ask the questions and listen to that presentation again at 5 p.m. on the website. So now the grants office. I thought we'd just kind of give an overview. Jackie, I asked Jackie if she would give us an overview of kind of where we were, where we've been, and maybe ideas of what's happened in the past. Not necessarily from 1890, but in the recent past, Jackie. So thank you guys all for being here.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity. If my memory is halfway, remembering how the grants office got established, actually Sheila Schermetzler was, I believe, the first grants manager within Albany County. And that was, gosh, several years ago, several meaning back probably to 2010 possibly. She did work for the county for several years and actually at that time took my assistant in my accounting department to serve as her assistant in the grants office. And so they were located across the street at the annex building and were housed there for a very long period of time. And then approximately 2015, Sheila resigned from that position. She and her husband moved to Green River and accepted a position actually there in Green River, and I believe was the executive director for either the seniors, if my recollection serves me correctly. And so the Board of County Commissioners advertised and actually interviewed, I was not part of that interview panel, and offered the position to an individual by the name of Ty Wright. Ty came in and worked with Ashley Kling, and they continued to develop and work with grants. And we're still located across the street in the annex, the old bank building. Shortly during the budget process, when we were reclassifying positions and having to look at budget cuts, the Board of County Commissioners made the decision to remove the grants office as its individual department and basically put it under the auspice of the county clerks. And so at that time, we housed Ty into the accounting office where Amanda currently does her responsibilities. Ty then went ahead, Ashley resigned, Ashley moved to Cheyenne, and Ty hired Bailey. And Bailey and Ty worked together, and unfortunately, Ty resigned back in, if my recollection serves me correctly, in about 2019. Once again, then, since it was under the clerk's office, I established a committee and basically asked Ty to serve on it, asked Sarah Reese, at that time, Commissioner Gosar, you were on the committee. We interviewed applicants, and unfortunately, we didn't have a wide variety of pool of applicants, but we did narrow our selection down, and we offered the position to an individual by the name of Billy Van Landingham. Billy was an educator for the school district, and unfortunately, due to I think maybe some stress and maybe some personality differences, she resigned in around December of 2019, which then led us to go through the process and interview again and offered the position to a gentleman by the name of Tim Thorson. Tim commuted, he resided in Cheyenne and commuted back and forth. Unfortunately, then COVID hit, and he was able to, as well as Bailey, they were able to telework from home. Unfortunately, again, due to some concerns, Tim was let go, and basically since about June of 2020, we have been without a grants manager. Through the transition through, since Ty, through Billy and through Tim, Bailey has been the person behind the scenes taking on all of the responsibilities within the grants department. As I alluded, and I think Peggy agrees, and so do the other department heads, Bailey has assumed a lot of responsibility and has done a great job in managing the work that needs to be done. I came to the Board of County Commissioners prior to the election cycle asking what direction do we want to go. At that time, I asked for recommendations from Ty, and Ty suggested that really you do need a grants manager and an assistant to oversee, because Albany County's portfolio has always continued. I mean, it's been big, but it continues to grow. And we've had great successes within the grants department and being able to receive federal grants, high-priced grants that we're very proud to receive. And so since that time, we discussed it briefly back before the election season and came to no conclusion. We continue to function, and we have continued to function, and I believe we've been very, very successful. And since that time, with the recommendation of Peggy, we were able to hire someone that could help write grants. And I've had the opportunity to virtually meet this individual, and both Ty and her and all of the other departments that work with this individual have a great working relationship. Unfortunately, she's not from Laramie. She's from out of state, and so has no desire to move to Laramie. And so basically her resources and her ability to assist have been very welcomed and much appreciated. We have been talking in how can we provide some assistance to Bailey, especially now knowing that she's going on maternity leave. Certainly the work does not stop. And so Bailey and I and Kayla met with Christine, and we developed a job description. We put the job description out, we advertised, and I'm happy to say that we've hired an individual Jessica Donahoe, who is here. Jessica comes to us from Cheyenne. She's worked with the Department of Health for several years in the grants department, and so has a wealth of knowledge and experience. Has jumped in with both feet. This is day number 3, and basically has used and provided her knowledge as a resource to Bailey. And Bailey, of course, is providing her with as much information so that the transition will continue in Bailey's absence, and we can continue to fulfill the responsibilities that we have with the grants department. And so I know that there's a concern about we have to be able to know that we meet all the requirements, as well as being able to monitor the grants that we have, and that we don't become non-compliant, because that could create many difficulties and financial risks if we aren't doing what we need to do. And I know that Peggy has a legitimate concern about what the direction of the grants office needs to go. I do too. I have to say that it's been, I felt like the tools that we've had, the resources in the office with Amanda and Kayla and myself in assisting Bailey prior to Jessica starting has been one and as a team approach. And now we're in the position where we're at the topic of discussion as to where we're going to go. Right now, Bailey and Jessica are housed in the back area of my office. They have a work area. They have the tools that are needed. I think they feel comfortable in the office, but should they expand, should you want to expand, I won't be able to house them in my office because I don't have any more room to do so. So that's just kind of just an overview of where we were and where we're at today.
Thank you so much, Jackie. I appreciate it. That's helpful to me and hopefully helpful.
Yeah, very.
Any questions, commissioners, that Jackie could handle for you? And then we'll just kind of move on. Ask Bailey to introduce Jessica to us, and then talk about the grants program, and then open it up to you guys independently. I'll have some questions at the end, I think, that systemically that I think need to be asked and answered so that we can figure out the direction forward. So Bailey, why don't you, Jessica, come up. Welcome, Jessica. Thank you for being here this morning.
Good morning, commissioners. This is Jessica Donahoe. She's from Cheyenne. She's had some experience in grants, which has been very helpful over the past 3 days, and hopefully will continue to help for these next 6 weeks. I've kind of hit the ground running with her, so I'm throwing her into everything, but you want to say anything about yourself?
Good morning, how are you? It's so nice to meet you all. Like she said, I'm from Cheyenne. I work with the Cheyenne-Laramie County Health Department in the nursing division. My grant knowledge is basically public health. So I've learned a lot in 3 days outside of public health. But you know, one thing that I've realized is the workings of a grant and the contracts are pretty much the same. Just learning how to reimburse and how they want their reimbursement done is the tricky part. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate it. So Bailey, I guess, would you give us an idea of what kind of grants are coming through? Are they mostly federal grants, state grants, FEMA grants?
Let's see. At this point, majority of our grants are pass-through grants from the state or their state grants. We have a few that are direct federal grants. One of them is our SAMHSA grant that we have that's a drug court grant. And then Amy Terrell did just receive another one from OJJDP, so the Department of Justice, which is a direct federal grant as well. Friday, I just submitted 2 more federal applications for SAMHSA. So those are all direct. Those ones are interesting to deal with, I guess is the best way to put it. There's not any contact to be able to reach out to the state that would get back to me very quickly. for any of our pass-through grants that we have, the state holds those grants, and then they just pass the money on to us and we deal with the state. We don't have to deal with anybody at the federal level. Then we have the state grants as well. Any of those are SLIB grants besides what the COVID CARES Act did. But those are some big construction grants. We're finishing up the North Entry, which was 2 or 3 of them rolled into one. We also have smaller state grants that are $5,000. So, and then we do have 2, we have one that we just kind of consider other that's from the foundation. And that's for the Pilot Hill project. And Sarah Brown Matthews takes kind of the reins on that one, but it does go through the county. Just so you all are aware, I mean, our engineer is retiring June 30th. That's been on my radar since he signed his last agreement. So we haven't really picked up any construction grants recently, mainly because I knew that was happening. I didn't want to get started on something and then lose him.
Then we may not have any projects in the dead of winter.
Yeah.
Do we have projects that we're putting off because of this, or is it just because none have come up just yet?
None have been brought to my attention, I guess is the best way to put that. I'm sure there's some community partners that have ideas. One of them was the elevator project that we tried to go through SLIB. That didn't work because they dissolved their joint powers board. So it's not eligible anymore. Then I had reached out to Wyoming Business Council with one of their programs last year, I believe. And they are changing up their structure. So they didn't think now was the best time to apply because they didn't know what funds those were going to look like. And then, of course, COVID. So everything has changed from there. Another thing that was always on the radar was the Epson Center was looking for kind of construction project. Ty had applied for it with Wyoming Business Council before she had left. It was not eligible for that. We did have a meeting with Epson Center and they were going to make a few adjustments in their application and then they were going to resubmit. Ty had left, then they called me and said, no, we're actually not interested at this time. So they decided not to reapply for that. So at this time, I mean, no big construction grants have been brought to my attention. That doesn't mean they're not out there and people don't want them. But that's kind of the holdup on any construction because I haven't pushed them either. Some of the other bigger projects is Peggy has decided to, or wants this mental health aspect in the county. So those were the 2 SAMHSA grants that I just applied for on Friday. And that's something that we're still continuing to look at. There's a research grant we're planning on applying for that's due in March that we're working on currently. So, and then of course that we have all these smaller grants. I have Homeland Security grants that are only $50,000, but it's still $50,000 to the county. There's an item on your agenda for Tuesday for a state fire assistance grant. It's only $5,000, but it pays for about 3 radios. So, I mean, there's the bigger projects and there's the little projects, and all of them have their own aspect to it, and all of them require different things.
Commissioner Rivera? No questions? Any more? Commissioner Richardson?
Well, kind of. So I get the flavor, and of course I kind of know it from experience. Are we finished with our obligations as far as the hospice stuff goes? Or are we still sort of tracking and tying things up?
They do, with Wyoming Business Council, they require us to do reporting for 5 years after the project's completed.
Do we
so
do the reporting or do they do it?
I am the one that gets the email from their portal that they have, and it just tells me when it's due, and then I send the questions off to hospice, they fill it out, and then I submit it. So it's not a lot of work on our part, but it's still, I'm the contact for it.
You're the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other balls that are in the air. I mean, a lot of this stuff is ongoing and it's part of how we fund what we do, and particularly things like the drug and specialty courts. EMA, is that a pass-through from federal to state to us?
Yeah, the EMA grant itself that pays for the office, basically the position, it is a pass-through. So it goes through Wyoming Department of Homeland Security. I haven't heard of the release date yet. Homeland Security was pretty convinced that with the new administration that all their grants may be delayed just a little bit this year.
So the process of a grant, do you research it? Does the department generally research it, bring it to you? Is it a kind of a mixture of both, Bailey? How does that work?
It's definitely a mixture of both at this point. There's ideas that I know about that I am keeping an eye out for grants.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's, I'm on lots of listservs at this point. So when things come up, I check them out. I also get grants sent to me. So when Peggy finds a grant that she's interested in, she sends it to me. When Amy finds a grant, she sends it to me. So it is a mixture at this point. To be perfectly honest with you, for me, having time to research actual grants has been few and far between lately. So it is something that I need to get back into, and hopefully with the help, it's something that I can get back into. So.
Sure. Awesome. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
I meant to tell Sue, because, we say EMA like she knows what we're talking about, but that's the emergency management. I think they realized after September 11th that there weren't local coordinators for big issues, disasters, spills, fires, terrorist events, whatever. And so the Office of Homeland Security funds some portion of these positions. And then they do things like get an inventory and locations of all the hazardous materials in Albany County and what goes through on the rails and the interstate. And, who's going to the emergency management? Yeah, so you're going to learn all about that, because that's kind of the overarching process to do that. But when we say EMA, like,
I assume that. Thank you. I appreciate your
a little
explanation.
question mark floats up and goes.
Yeah. Bailey, anything else? Always going to open it up to the departments and kind of have a discussion of the needs and where we might head, or Amy, yay.
Chairman Gosar, commissioners. I have interviews starting up again at 11, so I'm not going to be able to stay till 11:30.
Okay.
But I did want to talk before I left and say that Bailey's office is really, we're part of that office. She's part of our office. I look at us as the same. Without the partnership with the grants office, we would be functioning very differently. Sometimes it's a gentle reminder when a report hasn't come in. And sometimes it's, this is coming up, let's start getting prepared. She definitely manages what is going on with those grants. Not necessarily always does everything, but she's certainly saying this is coming down the pike, let's get ready for it. Your monthly report is due here. She's packaging everything and sending it off to whether it be the federal or into all the portals, federally, state. I send her all the information, and then she puts together in a package and does the financial piece for the billing and sends it all off. So I would say Bailey is definitely, her office is definitely a part of what we do constantly. I would say we talk no less than once a week, if not more. So I don't know, for my office, I can say when we write a grant, I definitely rely heavily on them. I'm not great at the writing piece. I more just tell them my ideas and sit and dream with them when we talk about these programs. And between Bailey and the grant writer, they're able to capture all of that and put it down. And between all three of us, we come up with these great grants. But it is definitely a partnership and a huge part of our office. If we changed what they did, I would have to almost look at bringing in more employees to support on our side. So I know Bailey does a ton for us, probably more than one person should be doing. I say that. I know I'm excited to have help. But like I'll send her bills. A quick example, I sent her all our drug testing bills this month, and she sent back and said, take the names off of them, get them to me again. Something I just wouldn't have even thought of doing. So we went it's a new process. We went in and blacked out all the names, sent them again. Now she has them, but just, it is a complete partnership with us. And we work together regularly. So as we move forward, if we can support the grants department, I'm all for that. I would help. But we rely heavily on them when it comes to these federal grants and the state grants. I know the state grants are easier for her to work with, but they're still on my end. There's still a lot of work in the sense that she's still requesting information and we're reaching out to her.
Yeah.
So.
Any questions for Amy?
How are things going? I mean, as far as your grants and your process, do you have any impending doom, or does it all feel pretty settled?
They're going well. So we just had the new ones come in that Bailey's helping. I mean, I will tell you, Bailey's sitting in on trainings. We have trainings coming up. We're getting ready to book hotels. So the new grants are hard to learn because there's all these little idiosyncrasies that Bailey definitely keeps us in track. And she's like, which training are you going to?
She's on your team.
Yeah, she is part of. I look at us as absolute coworkers together. I would not be managing all these grants. I don't manage the grants. I would not be running all these programs without Bailey arm in arm with me. It is definitely a partnership. And so when you say, how are we doing? We're doing great, but just anything from we're getting ready to book hotels and for nationals in August. We send approximately 20 people out to DC if we're traveling this year. And Bailey puts together all the hotels, the rental cars, everything we're doing. She puts all that together. And then we start booking hotel rooms. So she is definitely an extension of what we're doing. We paid for training for both K-9 deputies pre-COVID to go to training. She put all that together. So there is a lot of moving pieces between our departments where she pretty much helps us, maintains us, and helps us stay afloat and meet some of those goals we need to meet. So I'm sorry I have to leave, but really, if there's anything we can do from our department to support it, we are on board. In fact, we're hiring today. We're hiring a data input person because Bailey keeps telling me, "Where's that data? Get the data in. Get the data in." And we just things are falling off our plate, so we are bringing somebody in to help put the data in. So whatever we can do to support the grants department moving forward, it's been wonderful working with Jackie. It's been great working with Bailey. We've gotten to a place where I think we're all pretty seamless together.
Yeah. Sure.
Amy, is there anybody in your department that could do that work that you described as far as some of these conferences and all, the booking hotels, getting that information together so that Bailey or grant writers would do that?
Not currently. I think when we hire this data input person, we could probably take some of that. We're hiring them up to 28 hours a month. So we don't have 28 hours worth of data. So we have a college intern, we do the internship. So we could take some of that back as we're hiring this position. Some of the minor work that she did, the stuff that she's just the busy work, we could certainly bring back into our office.
Well, my thought is we'll generate some questions, and I've generated them in my mind here, that I'll send it out to all the department heads and directors. Perfect. Just to kind of understand, like February is a huge month for me in grants at the clinic for whatever reason. It just is. But July isn't, right? Because there's just nothing that comes through in July. And so I'll just be asking those kind of questions. When are the heavy months of grants for you, to try to build a system that makes sense, so that if we need somebody or we need somebodies during February and we don't need those same somebodies in July, we at least understand the need. And that's kind of the purpose of this meeting, is to understand the need from you guys.
Perfect. And yeah, because it's crazy for us. Like we have our grants renew in July and September. Then December, everything's going back in. I mean, we are off every other month or every two, but I would love to sit and have that, or answer those questions in an email and kind of talk about where I think Bailey and I are both syncing. I feel like there's certain, it ebbs and flows, right? Some months I don't have to talk to her every week, and we're sailing along, and then all of a sudden both of us are, we're just trying to stay afloat, get through what we're doing. Then all of a sudden we're good, and it just kind of
you're laboring under the strain.
Right, but sometimes we don't really interact at all, and I'm sure she's doing a bunch of stuff with other people. But absolutely, I would love to visit about that, and a good point for us to take back the little work as we start to get that help. So
yeah, thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
You bet. Rob, do you have anything for us? I don't want to forget you up there. So
yeah, I was just. Are we going to have a? There we go. Yeah, I was just. For the Road and Bridge Department, there's been well, actually quite a few big ticket items that the grants department has done for us. One of them was the Palmer Canyon flood when we had to go through FEMA, and there was all kinds of grants and stuff there that was used. We've used the grants department for culverts, for cattle guards, and some road projects if the grant was applicable. We're currently kind of looking for equipment replacement kind of through with the Albany County Fire Department. Is we use the excavator quite a bit on fires, and we're looking to maybe upgrade our excavator that where it would have a thumb and be a little safer and a little more useful in those type of projects. But yeah, we're definitely we use the grants department, and a lot of times it's we probably don't use it. I know we don't use it as much as the attorney and some of the other departments, but it is a valuable department for us.
Do you generate the ideas for the grants, Rob, or do they come from your office, or how does that happen mostly?
It actually kind of flows both ways. I think a lot of our grants have come from the grants office, where they'll be looking through something and say, hey, this might be applicable for your department, and that's the way that we hear about quite a few of the grants. We have done a little research on we want to eventually put in a security gate coming into our department, somewhat like what the sheriff's department has, and we're currently kind of looking for a grant, and that may be through Homeland Security or something like that would we'd be able to use.
Commissioners, any questions for Rob?
And I just have a comment, and I think that I don't think that the impact funds from wind farms is grant money per se, but I think that we have. So my question for Rob is, and Bailey, how do we track how we use and spend that specifically as it relates to road and bridge? I'm just looking for a comment on the process for, economic impact funds for that.
As far as the wind energy, the Boswell Springs, we track a lot of that through Tracy. I do have a sheet here that everything I spend that we use the Boswell Springs. I have it tracked all the way back since we started buying anything through that wind energy project.
Tracy, please. Thank you.
I think Rob said it all. We do have it tracked. We have it tracked in multiple different ways, as far as the revenue coming in, the monthly apportionment between all the different entities, whether it goes to Rock River, City of Laramie, and then the expenditures on the accounting software, which obviously goes through Jackie's office and Amanda. So, and then it's broke out by which wind farm, of course, because we have several that we have received money on.
Awesome. Rob, anything else, and then we'll move on.
I don't have anything further. Thank you.
But anybody else want to jump up there and give us an idea? If you use the grants department, if you don't use it, if you think that there might be more available to you, whatever, it'd be great.
I'd like a grant for my 7th person. Just kidding. I'm working on that. But anyway, we would flounder in our office. I mean, in my office, we take in all the revenues. They all come in ACH, and they all say almost identically the same thing, State of Wyoming. So if it wasn't for Bailey telling us where that money goes, we would have no idea. We would flounder. So she has this great worksheet that she updates and keeps us on track of where that money goes. And then she comes back after the fact and reconciles and says, oh, whoops, you guys put it in the wrong one, or maybe she told us wrong, or, because there's multiple grant years for each grant. It's super complex, but whether the grants office remains under Jackie's office or is it standalone, it really doesn't make any difference to us. We just have to have them. Otherwise, we don't know what to do with the money.
Too many accounts.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I first started with Albany County back in 2003, all the grant funds were funneling through one single fund, and it was a nightmare. One of my first tasks was to split all these monies out for the auditors, and that's about when Sheila came on board. And it was such a godsend to have somebody doing all the grant stuff, because the volume is overwhelming. We went from, at that time, I think we had, I don't know, maybe 20 different funds on the books that we tracked. And then with the grants each going into their own fund, we're now at 270 different funds, which makes it easy for reporting, but squishing it all together for an audit's a little tougher. But I mean, I'd rather have it easier for those guys because they have so many grants to do. And as we all know, our county can't function as efficiently or as well without all the grants.
So it's easier to pull it together for the auditors than pull it apart.
Yes. Very much so. So on that note, like I said, I don't really have a preference. Just we got to have them.
Right. Thanks, Tracy. Peggy, you bet.
Yeah. I understand, and I've always said how great Bailey is, but we're here, I think, to determine what does the grants department look like, who should supervise it, what is their role as it works with all the departments. So obviously we use Bailey because she's the only person. She's doing everything, which is not healthy and not, we are seeing issues. I am seeing issues. One grant that was overlooked and not talked about is our victim witness, where we actually secure VOCA and VAWA monies. We also depend on Bailey to assist us in the oversight on those grants and reporting. And just to give you an idea, it also involves vouchers, turning in what we need to do under their special programming. These grants, the data that's entered, all grants, is a special program that you have to enter in addition to Bailey doing an accounting within the county to make sure that we have followed through with all those grant requirements. So when we receive a federal grant, it is much more work on staff and with Bailey to oversight. As Amy alluded to, there's compliance issues. That is what I'm concerned about right now. And I know that Bailey's doing the best she can, but we need to be making sure, not that we get a letter telling us or a report we didn't comply. We should be reviewing these grants in advance to compliance prior to getting a letter that we didn't comply. I'm very nervous at times. My staff, through one of my victim witness, actually is assigned to making sure we're complying. But I do find it to be odd that we are kind of like the fox in charge of the chicken house. We're watching everything. It should be outside our department to oversee what we're doing to make sure, because how do I know there isn't funds going to us? And I trust my staff. I'm just saying, how do I know that things are going where they say they go and someone could be doing something fraudulent and I would have no idea? And everybody's saying, well, we have the auditors. They're not looking to that degree that you think. And I can give you stories from when I was in the city where everyone thinks the auditor's watching. The auditor's looking at something different than what we're looking for compliance. And I don't know if you recall, I'm old enough to remember years ago, the Pilsner glasses and the use of the cloud room for travel and things that were upgraded over in the city, and use of charge cards and all that was going on over with the police department, and different people were happening. So I can tell you, the auditors don't look for this. They're just looking at items, but there's compliance issues. So I feel that we need to thoughtfully look how the grant department looks. The writer we have secured off-site is magnificent and highly competent and works well with everyone. I would hate to see that go away unless we have equally a competent writer and a person that's knowledgeable. So that one makes me nervous when I hear moving, because we finally found someone who is, I mean, stellar in her writing. I do agree equally. The person we had previously, Tim, was an outstanding writer as well. And I will give that credit. That man could write grants. So I'm very nervous what we do. Even I told you the professors have observed her writing and she's good. So from the university watching. So my concern right now, there's a lot more grants we can get. We aren't dreaming. I'm being confined. I don't have the time to do what's needed on these grants. I need somebody in a staff that I can say, I need this grant, tell me what you need, and they're doing the work. Right now, we're doing the work and pushing it onto them and pushing everywhere. It is the most stressful thing in my office right now, the grants. It is very hard for me to be available to Bailey, to be everything to Bailey, because we don't have it. I view this right now to be not appropriate the way that we're doing this. And I use the word appropriate because it's not my job to be doing what I'm doing. I'm the attorney. I'm a specialist in this area, but yet I'm having to go fight for mental wellness and health to get grants. How is that my job? When I ran for office, it wasn't my job to do this. I want to be the person to make it happen, but financially we need somebody who's out there grabbing the money, and it's falling on me in my office, and I don't think that's appropriate. And I've been pushing, as Bailey says, I'm the one pushing Peggy's dream. It isn't my dream. If we did an audit of this community, number one is mental health issues in our community, and we need to find solutions. And that's not occurring because I can't have the funding to get where we need to be. So we have to do something. I feel the urgency. It isn't, well, I could use this, I could use this. We would, if we had the grants department, we would use it. But I'm afraid if we go for federal, we got to have compliance officers and data and everything that comes with that. And to me, I'm sorry, I think that the investment is worth it to get in the grants we need. So you have to spend money to get money. And the in-kind is also, she's also tracking in-kind too. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, Jackie, could you talk to us about a little bit about what Amanda's time and your office's time to help support the grants office? What the general idea of what kind of hours a week we're thinking about, or
I think what we initiate is a help for checks and balances. I mean, you know, when we overview, it's no different than anything else that we do. Having a second eye, it's just an audit that we do. And Amanda probably on a weekly basis, maybe, 1 to 2 hours. It's just depending on the grant and the timing. Vouchers, Bailey seeks assistance from Amanda seeks assistance from Bailey. So it's a two-way street is what it is. I am in full support of a grants office and a grants manager. 3 grant managers in less than 2 years, that's been tough. And it's not that because we don't need it, it's just that we have had unfortunate personality conflicts. I don't know how better way to say it. There just have been issues that have arisen where we have not been able to keep the people that we have employed in the past. And, I don't know, maybe the difference right now having the grant writer is Karen is off site. I have not had the opportunity to meet her in person. I don't know that she has come, well, I know she's come to Albany County, but not on a regular basis so that we could because of her writing skills and everything. I don't know if anyone has had the conversation. Does she want to be the grants manager for Albany County, even though she's not within Albany County because of her expertise? You know, I don't know. We've not had that conversation. But I think the most difficult thing through the whole process is we've had great people, but unfortunately we weren't able to keep them.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, please.
Some people go part to whole, right? And I go whole to part. So that's why it may be why I say the kinds of things I do when I say them. What I think, to kind of boil down so we don't get too far in the weeds, I think that we have to keep the contract grants writer, period, for right now at least. And the reason we do is because Bailey's going to go on maternity leave. And the learning curve is steep enough with the help she already has that, you know, we have to keep this headed the direction it is so that things don't fall apart when Bailey's not here. So that's kind of a short-term thing. I don't, as far as, I guess, Peggy's point about grant compliance, that's kind of a philosophical and policy thing. I don't know who should be in charge of sort of like the compliance of the execution of the grant. I mean, that is what these ladies do, but down to the granular level, like, but that's almost a personnel management thing, right? And I don't think that, you know, if you're traveling or whatever, I don't know how the grants office could do that granular work. It's something that we probably ought to take a little bit longer look at if it's a real issue. My other thought is that grants are policy, right? Because you can't do something without funding, and you can't fund something without a policy direction. You know, they move together. And so I'm not sure whose job it should be to go hunting for grants. The reason is because everybody in their own department has certain policy or process needs that maybe the grant writer or the grant specialists don't know, you know. So the team approach kind of seems to work, but you know, if somebody had a need, that, you know, this is the bottleneck in my operation. This is where I can't find funding to do this. But you know, then they approach the grants people. I think it has to start that way. I don't know that somebody we pay to do all the grants accounting and sort of compliance stuff and writing should necessarily go surfing for grants without a specific policy purpose, or otherwise that could be wasted time, right? So the sweet spot in all of this, I don't know where it is, but and I don't know if you guys are picking up what I'm putting down, because I kind of hit a couple of different things. So I think long term, short term, we have to keep it the way it is, so everybody can learn, and so nothing falls off our plate. We actually, Sue, have a habit of, this organization, Albany County, is very disciplined when it comes to money. And we have a tendency to get grants or use general fund money to fund programs that have direct effects outside, and then we go nuts on the inside working our butts off to support it, because we struggle to backfill the internal support that our people need for these things. So, you know, if you donate to a charity and they use 90% of it for for their purpose and 10% for their kind of fixed costs and overhead and personnel. That's really good. Lots of charities are like 2/3, 1/3 or whatever. And here, we, for whatever reason, we have a sickness that we don't backfill inside our internal processes, people to administer all of these things. And I bet Bailey's back there nodding her head because she's like a duck, calm on the surface and paddling like hell underwater. So where all of these intersect is where I'm sort of trying to go. And I think short term, we keep it like it is, and long term, to me, I don't know if we need an in-house writer or externally, because I'm not the one participating and trying to utilize that service, but we definitely need to make sure we have the help on the accounting and tracking side inside our operation. And when Amy was speaking, and she was talking about the things that Bailey does with and for her, it was very grant manager-ish, as opposed to grants accounting or grants specialist-ish. It was that relationship and those roles were very manager-ish. And actually, I don't think that the grants manager has to be the grants writer. There could be some advantage. Like in the past, that's generally what we looked for, is somebody who's good at writing grants to be the manager. But directing traffic on all those accounts and the vouchers and that's a big job. And it actually could be structurally that the manager is here and you have sort of a specialist or an accountant and a writer here. You know what I mean? Let's keep going.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Thanks, Heber, because many of the thoughts that you had, I had as well going in my head as I'm hearing people talk and all. I'm concerned that we are in compliance with every grant that we have, and we see it through, whether it's continual ones or whatever. We do very much need to make sure that we are meeting those requirements, whatever it is, as tiny as it is or as big as it is. I'm going to put you on the spot, Bailey, and I apologize for doing so, but I sometimes, in my short little time here and hearing things and all, I get the impression that there might be some departments that overuse you, and that's why I was asking Amy if some of those responsibilities could be taken, the smaller ones, now that we have Jessica here, and if we do decide to hire somebody else, do you feel that you're being overused by some departments where they could be, handling some of these smaller responsibilities? And again, I apologize for putting on.
Hey, that's a yes or no question. You don't necessarily have to say.
I didn't ask you which department.
I'll put it this way.
That's me. I overuse it.
There are some departments that I definitely have
and I don't
more involved in than others at this point. Sometimes it's the number of grants they have. Sometimes it's the type of grants they have. Rob Fisher, he has a smaller lighting project. It's about a $20,000 project. It's still taken a lot of work because we're dealing with Rocky Mountain Power, who hasn't been the most helpful recently. So it really depends on what's going on, what exact grant each department has, but there are some that I help out more than others. Amy Binning, when I first started, you kind of learn the lay of the land, like who, really knows exactly what they're doing with their grant, and then some that want some more help, basically. Amy Binning was one that she knew more than I did about her grants, and she was fine taking the reins on it. We do have Blake now, and he just needs a little bit more help at this point. It's not something he's familiar with. So that's also what I'm trying to be. I want to be everybody's help as well. But there are some departments that I wouldn't necessarily say overuse, but I do help them a little bit more than other departments. Yeah.
So it's kind of a moving target. It's about the team approach where, I mean, I guess if I was going to follow up that question, I would say, does it stay like that? Like if you're helping somebody get up to speed or they're helping you get up to speed, does that interaction stay like that for months, years, or do you generally sort of all get on the same page and then it smoothens out and you go to the next sore spot or the next bottleneck?
So what does tend to happen is, like Commissioner Gosar said, there's different due dates for different types of grants. Department of Health grants are usually right at the beginning of the year. So, and they're a lot of work. They're all of our drug court, mental health, not necessarily the public health aspect yet, but those types of grants are all right up front. Then into March, we get more of the Homeland Security grants. So then my focus does go a little bit off of Amy Terrell and then more onto Blake and the Sheriff's Department. Then also in March is usually our Crime Victim Witness Grant. Luckily that only comes up twice a year and we just have to submit a budget every year. Then in May, we have like a bulletproof vest application that's due. So my primary focus is making sure those applications get completed, making sure they get in up by their deadlines. So that takes full priority of whatever I have, besides the reimbursements that also have due dates. That does change depending on what grant applications they are. So I just about finished, or I did just finish all of Amy's drug court grant applications. So my focus is shifting a little bit onto the Homeland Security grants, making sure those are going to be set up and ready for when I leave because they're going to be due when I'm gone, unfortunately. So it really just depends on what's going on, especially then closing out grants. We have some that follow our fiscal year that have to be closed out. Everything has to be then spent by the end of June because of our accounting. We have grants then that follow the federal fiscal year, so they go October 1 to September 30th. And then those ones we get a little bit more leeway because our fiscal year doesn't follow that, so we don't have to close. So it really just depends on the due dates. I go by the due dates is what happens. And some departments get more of a focus of me at that time, and then others don't. But I have yet to miss a due date. So, but that's what drives my office is those due dates because it's not something we rely on, or it's not something we can set. It's something that we have to follow.
Yeah.
Maybe if I could ask, can you tell us what you most feel comfortable with and what you feel are, I know you may have an interest, but it may not be the thing that you're best at. What do you feel most comfortable with and where do you actually want to be in this grant department?
Okay. I am a numbers person. I think everybody at the county probably knows that by now. Numbers are my thing. The writing portion I am not great at, and I won't lie to you and tell you I am. That's part of the reason why we did bring on Karen as our contracted writer. There are grants though, however, like the Homeland Security grants that does have some writing, but it's not as much as a big federal grant worth of writing. It's a writing that I can handle. So it doesn't take me any time to complete one of those. But numbers are my thing. I like my relationships with the state entities is also great. I have people that are comfortable to reach out to me. Hey, something got sent to the county. We don't have it yet. What's going on? Okay, let me look into it and I'll find out. So, and then I have no problem reaching out to them too. If we have something going on or something's just not quite right, I reach out to them. My community partners, especially with the CARES Act, has definitely increased as well. Steve Hamaker over at Big Brothers Big Sisters, I have a great relationship with him. He has no problem calling me up. Where's this grant money? I haven't even heard of the grant being released yet, so we're still waiting on this. But I do like my partnerships with everybody around in my world, basically. I like working with the departments. I like helping them out. I want to help them out. That's part of my job. I should be helping them out. But I mean, honestly, my biggest weakness is researching the grants, partially because I haven't had time. And then the big writing portions. Those are my weaknesses there. I feel a lot of the other parts in the office, if I'm not there, I'm getting there, I'm enjoying it. But numbers is the reason Ty Wright hired me. I was the opposite of her. She hired me because I have that background. And we were a great partnership. She was great at the writing. I was great at the numbers. But yeah, I've definitely grown, had a lot more to do since then. But and I've learned a lot, and it's been a great, I look at it as an opportunity. It's been a downfall a little bit, but I feel like I've grown a lot over the past couple of years and starting to find kind of my niche and going from there.
So maybe would you say you feel more comfortable at the level of managing the individual grants as opposed to managing the department? Or is that your ultimate goal, is
to be honest, that's my ultimate goal, is to be the grant manager. What I would like to see is for me to be able to learn more, to get more of that training. There was a few trainings I was supposed to do last year, wasn't able to because of COVID. But I want to be able to grow. I want to be able to get to that point. That's my goal.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Anything else?
Yeah. Now, you're making my brain light up. So my question, I guess, is: are you comfortable managing the people and the process? And do you think you have the skills for that? Because basically, you got to direct some traffic and put out things and get them back. You sort of just do that with everybody in the county. But are you comfortable doing that?
There are definitely situations I'm more comfortable with than others, but I think everybody can say that.
Sure.
It's definitely something I'm improving on. Amy Terrell, if she's late on something, I have no problem telling her, hey, you're late, I need this in now.
Right.
Then there's, other situations, some people that are newer, like Sheriff Applehans, and don't have that relationship just yet, but we'll get there eventually. But no, there are, yes, I'm in the grants office. Yes, I hold everything. I'm the one that's supposed to be making sure everything's right. But it also is a team effort. So I'm also not the one doing the reporting for Amy Terrell. She has to do her reporting. If the reports don't go in, we don't get the money. Then I get an email where you're not getting the money because you don't have a report. I call up Amy, why is this not reported in the portal?
So it's not super top down, it's cooperative. I guess a follow-up question is, when you were hired, Ty Baker was the grants manager. Do you think, or can you see a way how those roles could get switched, where a person with your skills could be in charge of it all and the grants writer works for you?
I do. I've actually even done some research over the fall when we brought you guys the first time. I had done some research, and then also there was a conference that I was able to attend, at least virtually this year, that their grants office is set up the opposite. They have a hired grant writer that does the writing, and that's it. And then they have the grant manager that kind of holds everything else, or then a grant writer with an assistant or a compliance person, whatever it is.
It would be kind of like managing a business office and having people for certain tasks. Our problem probably is that we're so small that a person has to be a jack of all trades. If it was the city of Denver, they have a department and they get to specialize, The one other question that I have for you is, maybe I asked it already. I did. I just forgot that I asked it.
Jackie, do you have something? Sure.
I do. There's one other thing that I failed to mention. You did mention that there are off times when Bailey may not be as busy as other times. I can tell you that she's been a resource in my office on those off times. She assisted us this election season beyond more than anybody could do being outside of my office. She assisted in early voting. And so I think we have a great partnership. I consider her as part of my team. It would be, selfishly, it would be hard to lose her and now Jessica, but I want to do what's in the right thing for the county. But I do have to applaud everything that she's done. She has made Albany County very successful in the things that she's done.
Well, to be respectful of you guys' time, I have some thoughts, and then I'm going to ask the commissioners and whoever else wants to send in thoughts so that we create some sort of survey that can be done anonymously, so that people will feel free to speak honestly about the thoughts. In my 2 years here and some familiarity with grants, we have a systems problem. There are no guardrails on the grants department. There are no, this is the person you go to see for compliance. This is the person you go see for reporting. This is who generates the grants. I don't think those are defined. I think those desperately need to be defined. If writing is going to be contracted, that needs to be in people's budgets, right? We need to understand that. We need to understand what match budgeted amounts go to which department. And so I think when you have 3 managers in a year and a half, you have to say the minimum you have is a systems problem. And so how do we correct that system? You know, I wrote down some questions. What do we have needs per office, right? Like Adam's office and David's office might need security. That might be something that they're looking for. There are grants that come across for cybersecurity. Peggy's office obviously needs mental health, and not your office, mental health grants, excuse me.
Both ways there.
No, we do.
Right.
I'm not denying it.
And so if we don't ask, what do you need? What are your hopes? We'll never know. The calendar piece for me is really important because you need to dedicate people's times to those. So if all the health grants come in February, well, then maybe public health gets up on the priority, and maybe Peggy's office that deals with mental health and Amy Terrell, they get more moved towards the priority. Whereas if there are other grants that come for the treasurer's office or for us, I think we have left a lot on the table. The Biden administration is talking about infrastructure, right? Energy efficiencies, energy conversions, water systems. If we don't get involved in that, I think we're missing the boat. And I'm not sure how many more times the boat's going to come around. And so those are conversations that we need to have, but we have to have a system in place so that everybody's not hitting Bailey and not hitting Jessica February 15th saying we need something by February 16th. And then they need to have the ability, who's ever in those offices, to say, yeah, no, thank you, but it's mental health time for Peggy's office. It's voting time for Jackie's office. When we're done with those people, we'll move you up, right? And so I don't think those systems are in place. And I think they desperately need to be in place because then you don't run through people in a year and a half. And so I will send you guys a note, and I'll send all you guys a note, and maybe we could send it out. Give me ideas of questions that would help us develop a system. I desperately believe in systems. And so can we do that? I don't want to burn people out, because you burn people out and put too much on their plate and they don't have the way to say no. And I just want people to be able to say no. Yeah, Jennifer, it looks like you have something.
I just had one thing to add before you're
I
done.
love what you said.
I know,
It's brilliant.
it is. I just wanted
Still
to
count on it.
add to your thoughts. I was at the Fair Board meeting on Monday night and they said, oh, you have a grants meeting? And I said, yes. And they said, oh, we have a ton of repairs that need done out here. And I said, have you looked into grants? They said, we don't even know how to do that. And I said, well, can you get me a list of the kind of repairs that you need? So they sent me a list this morning, actually, of the things that they have on the fairground list of things that need to be repaired. So there's that breakdown in communication also. If we can get, we being the departments and everybody else in the county, from Bailey the resources on where to look even, because I don't think they even know where to look for grants as part of your system. Like, here's your resources. You go look for these grants here. If you find something, this is how you do it. But I think just to emphasize that need, this is just the only one I was at this week. So they have these needs that could use the help of grants, but don't quite know where to get started yet.
Yeah, you can purchase software systems where you can put in fairground replacement and it'll filter grants for you. And so if we knew those needs, then maybe we put somebody in charge and say, hey, this is a software that we're gonna see what we can get for fairgrounds or whatever, right? If it's that specific, yeah.
Mr. Chair, when you say generate grants, are you talking about researching afterwards? Because I'm totally agreeing with Peter that we need to have the various entities come to us with their needs and not us having to go to them, what do we need? We can't possibly manage all that. So I'm in support of helping these various entities getting the grants, but when you say generate grants, you're meaning possibly do the research for that need, or what do you mean by generate grants?
So it doesn't make much sense to me if public health is not the least bit interested in a mobile vaccine clinic to try to generate that. But if Brian says to you, hey, we're really looking for women, children health materials in grants, then if we purchase software, we can put those things in, and maybe somebody's job is just to kick these subject search words and say, hey, I know they want this. Send out the grant to Brian and say, hey, this is an opportunity. Is this something that you guys can manage, right? Is this something you want to do? And just that piece, I don't know that. And then maybe if Brian has a writing budget, that he figures out who he wants to send it to and does some of that work. I think ultimately the program has to be the decider of which grants they're going to pursue and how they're going to pay for the writing, and then how they're going to come in to do the compliance and the reporting with these guys. I don't think these guys should just have all compliance and all reporting for every grant that comes to them. You know, they need to know. Or maybe you don't.
I actually think that the you know, when you're sort of, and I'm not saying you're behind, but when you kind of work from behind, there's always little messes that sort of hang out and things keep jumping in the queue, and if you're a type A person, it drives you nuts, right? So even something like using keywords to search and help solve somebody's problem, well, you got to put everything else to bed first. I think that they only need a little bit of help, and Bailey would know how to do that. Like, we wouldn't have to tell them how to do that with you know, because depending on the type of grants, maybe some of them require tons of research and some of them jump right out of the computer and smack you in the face, right? So from my perspective as a commissioner, I don't know that I'm inclined to micromanage the process by how different departments pursue grants. I think that somebody like Bailey could, but she has to have enough help behind her that she can get a few free hours a week to work ahead. And in my business, I've been working from behind for like 20 years, and it makes me crazy. It's because I don't have capital, right? So it's like I've almost broken my brain from it. It sucks. And so I know what that burden is like. But I don't think it requires a lot of grease to break that loose.
Bailey, do you guys have a software grant program that you do research on? Is it Grant Station or something like that?
The only one that we've ever, since I've been here, have subscribed to is the grants.gov. We do have to pay a fee to use that one. There was a training I did take this fall online that did have like a software program, and that was something I was going to try to add it to my budget this year, but it's not until June. So
and that's where I'm thinking that you automate some of this, and it saves you so much time.
Yeah,
right?
and they like showed us kind of how to use it and things like that, and I thought it could be very helpful to the county, but I wasn't gonna bring that to your attention till budget time, so. But that was kind of on my list to
Can she
hopefully
take
get.
her mask off when she's talking to us? She's breathing for
Well.
Well, just, well, thank you for that, and I think that's really important. I have that at the clinic, and it saves me unbelievable amounts of time. Anybody else? Any last thoughts? So my charge to you is I will, program directors or whatever, you have ideas, send them to me. I'm gonna compilate all this stuff and see if I can get it to David and Adam so that they can produce a survey that we just send out to people so that they can answer however they like, you know, anonymously, and then we'll just compile it and see where we are. And I thank you for being willing to do that, David, on the spot. Sound like a plan? Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. I look forward to this conversation finishing and where we go from here. Okay, have a great afternoon. Thanks.
Pete, I'm totally impressed. You said in one sentence what it took me 4 minutes to say, and that is, we have a systems problem. That's what I was trying to get at, but I couldn't do it.
Well, thanks, Eva.